The United Nations recently warned of the irreversible effects of climate change if not addressed as soon as possible. Scientists and experts have been working on reports and tools that can help countries reduce the impact of the phenomenon. Cruz from the Global Commission on the Economy and Climate will tell us more. Good morning, Ian, and welcome to Daybreak.
Thank you very much.
Now, Ian, tell us more first about this report, or first about the commission that you have, this flagship project that it was commissioned not only by the United Kingdom, but by other countries as well.
Yes, so it was commissioned by 7 countries, and it's been led by a former Mexican President, Felipe Calderon, among 24 global commissioners. And the key findings of the report is you can have better growth and better climate together.
That's a very good thing to hear, because before we used to believe it's either you choose the climate or your economy. So how is this possible? How can there be like an improved economy and also reduce risk in climate change?
So we look at 3 key systems: cities, land use, and energy. And what we find that in those 3 systems, over the next 15 years, the world will be spending $90 trillion on infrastructure investment. And our findings have shown that this will not cost more, but it's about the choices that countries make. So if I can take cities, for example, it's the savings that can be made in cities, and why that can be good for growth and also the climate, is that you can have compact and connected cities.
Compact and connected cities.
So for example, in Philippines, we have a situation where Philippines and urbanization is going to grow from 50% of the population to 70% in 2030. The choices that Philippines makes in terms of how it plans for the cities and how it creates more compact and connected cities with better access to public transport can make it a more productive city because it's less footprint. So you need less infrastructure costs, less use of materials, and people can walk and live in those cities with public transport, so that can be cheaper.
Well, we have an opportunity for that, especially since you've heard about what happened to us in Yolanda. So we are in the rebuilding phase, but you also talk about land and infrastructure. Now, how do we do this?
So we understand that in terms of, you've got legislation coming up to protect your land. And in Southeast Asia, out of all the other countries, Philippines has not put in some laws around land use. And the protecting of land use will firstly allow it to be protected, and then most importantly, you can find land which is more productive, as well as reduce the degradation of land in the way you develop your land systems.
And obviously the infrastructure should like complement all these.
Yes, and I think what you see is in those 3 systems of cities, land use, and energy, they are all interrelated. And so the key point is to not look at them as segments, but to bring them all together. And you can actually have a system where you can have productive cities, productive land use systems, and more efficient energy systems all together.
So you're here in the Philippines to present this report.
Yes.
To whom will you be giving these information?
So it's to communities, both within government officials within Philippines. It's also to communities who work on climate change, and also into business communities as well. Will
you be also looking into how we will be implementing the changes based on what the suggestions are?
Yes, so while the report has focused on, has done country studies in the United States, China, will be doing so in Brazil, India, and Ethiopia. We have not done one in the Philippines, but the issues that we deal with are ones that we want to discuss with people in the Philippines to see how they can tailor it to their local context.
I see. Now, one of the key things here about the recommendations on what to do after the effects of severe typhoons and so on and so forth, it talks about lowering carbon emissions, and it suggests that we also do the same here in the Philippines. Now, if we implement these changes that you're suggesting, but what if developed nations are not lowering their carbon emissions? How will that impact us?
Yes. So there was a recent announcement last week with US and China, the 2 biggest economies in the world and the 2 biggest emitters. And they have taken very important first steps down the direction of taking action in climate change. In fact, I was in China last week for the launch of our new climate economy report on the 14th of November, and China itself sees very strong economic reasons to do so, which can be applied to Philippines. What it has in terms of its energy system, it has found that growing in a high carbon way through coal power stations has cost a lot of money for it, representing 70% of the fuel costs. Also, the second point is it reduces your energy security for domestic reasons. And the third point, there's significant air pollution. All these three issues are very relevant to Philippines now and in terms of the energy systems it plans for the future.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us this morning, Ian. And we hope that we will be instilling all those changes that are necessary for a better future for all of us.
Yes, and I think if I can leave you with my last point is that growth and climate can come together, and the ways that Philippines itself looks at the planning for its energy systems, city systems and land use systems has a significant impact for its own domestic reasons that can be also good for the climate and its contributions internationally.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Again, we've just spoken with Ian de Cruz. He's the Global Strategic Engagement Director of the Global Commission on the Economy and Climate. Next on Daybreak, we'll check how